Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lecture 4 of Cricket South Africa's Level 1 Umpiring course, brought to you by Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. My name is Tom Mokorosi, and as usual, my co-presenter for today is Abdullah Steenkamp. We'll be taking you through only 4 laws today, laws 18, 19, 20, and 21. But they are very detailed and very important in your knowledge of the laws of cricket. So please stay tuned and enjoy the evening's lecture. The meeting protocols are on the screen and the same as always. You'll notice that your microphones and your cameras are currently deactivated. Once we've completed presenting, we will activate your cameras and your microphones, and you will be able to partake in our question and answer sessions. You may, while we present, type in any questions related to the content that we're presenting into the chat box, and we will answer those questions after the presentation. And if there are any further questions, you will be allowed to put your virtual hand up, and we will acknowledge you to ask your question then. Jumping into today's laws, Law 18 is all about the crux of cricket, scoring runs. We learned yesterday that to win a match, a team needs to score more runs than the runs that their opposition scores in a completed innings. So, how do we score runs? Law tells us that the score shall be reckoned by runs. When is a run scored? A run is scored so often as the batters at any time while the ball is in play have crossed and made good their ground from one crease. Runs are scored when a boundary is scored, and Law 19 is all about boundaries. We will get into that detail later this evening. Runs are also scored when penalty runs are awarded. And we touched on penalty runs earlier in the course, and we shall, throughout the laws of cricket, show you as to how and when a batting side is awarded penalty runs and also a fielding side is awarded penalty runs. There is a concept in cricket called short runs. Let's learn a little bit more about short runs. A run is short if a batter fails to make good his or her ground in turning for a further run. So you cannot have any short runs if the batters have only attempted and completed one run. Okay, so a short run happens on the turn for a second or a third or a fourth or a fifth or a sixth run, not on the first run. Although a short run shortens the succeeding run, the latter, if completed, shall not be regarded as short. A striker setting off for the first run from in front of the popping crease may do so also without penalties. Those of you who have watched him over the years will know that David Miller, the South African middle order batter, he bats a good half a meter outside of his crease most of the time to seam bowlers whenever the keeper is not standing up to the stumps. So what the law is telling us here is that if and when David Miller hits the ball into the field and starts a run, he does not need to go back into his crease to start the run from behind the popping crease. No, he can run from that half a meter outside of the popping crease to the other crease to make good his ground, and that shall be sufficient for completing a single. So let's watch a video now which describes the difference between a unintentional short run and also an intentional short run. How do we deal with them? We deal with them differently.
Hello guys, welcome to my channel. This video is a new addition to the analysis series. Let's get started. On 15th of November 2018, second day of second test match between Sri Lanka and England, a strange incident happened. Let's watch the footage. Looks like a normal short run case, isn't it? Well, that's not the case. Let's see what umpire's decision was. You did not understand what he signaled. He initially disallowed all the runs scored by the batsman on that delivery. Further, he informed the batsman about deliberate short running and awarded 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see what the cricket law has to say about running short. There are two categories in this: unintentional and deliberate. Let's take a look at unintentional short running first. If a batsman runs short, then the umpire shall call and signal short run as soon as the ball becomes dead, and that run shall not be scored. For example, if they run two and if they run one short, then only one run will be scored. Now, let's take a look at deliberate short run. Cricket law states that if either umpire considers that one or both the batsmen deliberately ran short, then wait for the ball to become dead and further disallow all the runs scored on that delivery, return the batsmen to their original end, and award 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see why the umpire considered this incident as deliberate short running. As you can see, both the batsmen start running and then striker Roshan Silva feels that the ball will reach the boundary. But upon seeing Moeen Ali has stopped the ball, he runs back to the striker's end. But in between, the striker Roshan Silva did not ground the bat at all, which made the umpire to consider this as deliberate short run. If he had at least tried to ground the bat, then most likely that the umpire would not have considered this as a deliberate short run. 5 run penalty for this feels a bit harsh, isn't it? Now let's see why exactly this law exists. In an IPL match between Mumbai Indians and Kings 11, while chasing 231, Mumbai Indians needed 16 runs of the last over. Kieron Pollard, who faces the first ball of the over, strikes the ball and sets off for the run, thinking that he can come back for two. But upon realizing that he cannot make it, he runs back to the striker's end without completing the first run. And it can be seen that he did that deliberately as he wanted to get back the strike. It is clearly unfair as he got one run and also he came back to the strike. To prevent the players from doing such things, this law exists. But in Roshan Silva's case, he was not trying to gain any unfair advantage. But since he did not make any effort to complete the first run, it was ruled deliberate short run. Still have any doubts with this? Do let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, then hit the like button and share with all your friends. If you have not subscribed yet, then don't forget to subscribe for more such contents.
Just to comment on that Kieron Pollard incident, the umpires failed in their duties to implement the 5 penalty runs for the deliberate short run. And I think the issue there wasn't that the bowlers and umpire did not see the deliberate short run, because the footage that we could see of Kieron Pollard turning short by almost a meter was from a camera that is installed on the cap of some IPL umpires. So he definitely saw Kieran Pollard turning deliberately short. Whether it was a lack of knowledge of the law or whether he was too scared with Kieran Pollard being a big name player to implement the penalties for deliberate short run, I'm not sure. But I make the point because it is important for us as umpires to A, know our laws, B, know how to enforce them and when to enforce them, and C, enforce them without fear or favor, no matter who the player in question is. So please, ladies and gents, let us learn our laws and let us know when, how to apply them. Other forms of penalty runs: player returning without permission and coming into contact with the ball. We shall deal with that in Law 24. Illegal practice on the field. These are both 5 penalty runs which can be awarded to the batting side. A no ball. Abdullah will take us through all forms of no balls this evening. That is only 1 penalty run. It's not 5 penalty runs for a no ball. Wide is also just 1 penalty run. Illegal fielding, we touched on yesterday, 5 penalty runs to the batting side. And the ball striking an unworn helmet of the fielding side, which has been discarded behind the wicket keeper, that is also 5 penalty runs to the batting side. And in Law 41 and 42, which we do not cover in this course, but they are detailed in this presentation, they are forms of penalty runs awarded to both the batting side and the fielding side in those 2 laws. There are 2 types of boundaries, boundary 4 and boundary 6, and we shall go into more details on those in the following law, Law 19. Can runs be scored when a batter is dismissed? Let's see what the law says. When a batter is dismissed, any runs for penalties awarded to either side shall stand. No other runs shall be credited to the batting side except as follows. If a batter is dismissed obstructing the field, the batter shall also score any runs completed before the offence of which he was regarded guilty of obstructing the field. If, however, the obstruction prevented a catch from being taken, no runs other than penalty runs shall be scored. If a batter is out to run out, the batting side shall also score any runs completed before the wicket was fairly put down. So if they were run out attempting the 3rd run, then the 2 runs that the batters completed before the run out was ensued, then those 2 runs will be scored. If, however, a striker who has a runner is dismissed run out, any runs completed by the runner and the other batter shall be disallowed. Some of you might be surprised to still see talk of a runner in the laws of cricket. They are still allowed in some competitions. In all international cricket, as professional international cricket, no runners are allowed. But Abdullah and I were involved in a over 40s World Cup here in Cape Town in February this year, and there were runners allowed in that competition. So the law still allows for runners. Playing conditions in specific tournaments disallow runners. We shall briefly touch on runners in Law 25. Who gets credited for runs and when? Law tells us that unless stated otherwise, if the ball is struck by the bat, all runs scored by the batting side shall be credited to the striker, except in the following cases. When there is an award of 5 penalty runs, it shall be scored as penalty runs. And of course, the no ball is also recorded as extras and doesn't get credited to the batter. If the batter scores runs off a no ball, then it is 1 run for the no ball, which is recorded under extras, and whatever runs are ran off the bat will be credited to the striker. If the ball is not struck by the bat, runs shall be scored as penalty runs, byes, leg byes, no ball extras, or wides, whichever the case might be. If byes or leg byes accrue from a no ball, only the 1 run penalty for no ball shall be scored as a no ball, and the remainder as byes or leg byes. Who are the runs counted against? Law tells us that the bowler shall be debited with all runs scored by the striker, all runs scored as no ball extras. Why? Because it is generally the bowler's fault when a no ball is bowled. All runs scored as wide shall go against the bowler, similar to no balls. And then, when does the batter have to return to their original ends? When the striker is dismissed in any of the modes of dismissal listed below, the not out batter shall return to his or her original end. If the striker is bowled, then the non-striker remains on the non-striker's end. If the striker is stumped, then obviously the non-striker remains at his or her end. If the striker has out-hit the ball twice, again, the non-striker remains at his or her original end. Leg before wicket, similar story. Hit wicket, also the non-striker will remain at his or her original end. This is a new one since October 2022. If the striker is out caught, then the non-striker will remain at his or her original end. Even if they cross while the ball is in the air and the ball is caught after the batters have crossed, this revised law tells us that the non-striker should go back to his or her original end. So the new striker, the new incoming batter, will always be on strike if a batter is out caught, unless, of course, it was the last ball of the over, in which case then the first ball of the new over will be bowled to the non-striker in the previous over. If a striker is out obstructing the field where the obstruction or distraction prevents the striker from being out caught, then the not out batter will return to his or her original end, even if they had crossed before the obstruction or distraction happened. That is Law 18, scoring runs. We now move on to one of the ways that a batter can score runs, which is through boundaries. Let us first determine the boundary of the field of play. Law tells us that before the toss, the umpires shall determine the boundary of the field of play, which shall be fixed for the duration of the match. Sometimes when you get to a field, it is not that clear and obvious. Maybe the club does not have a rope running all the way around the field to demarcate the boundary. Maybe there's a tree, or maybe there's a rugby pole or a set of rugby poles inside the field of play. So we need to determine the boundary and also what happens with any fixed objects inside the field of play. And very importantly, we need to discuss all of this with the captains at the toss. Law goes on further to tell us that the boundary shall be determined such that no part of any sight screen will at any stage of the match be within the field of play. You do see at some grounds that the sight screen is part of the boundary. This is allowable as per the law because the side screen is not inside the boundary, but it's part of the boundary. However, in international and Cricket South Africa provincial playing conditions, for the safety of players, there's a requirement for there to be 3 yards or 2.74 meters of space from the boundary to any physical obstacle outside of the boundary. So the advertising boards, for example, need to be 2.74 meters away from the boundary rope, a minimum of 2.74 meters. But that's in playing conditions and not in law. How do we identify and mark the boundary? Where practical, the boundary shall be marked by means of a continuous white line or by an object in contact with the ground. Quite often a rope is used. If the boundary is marked by a white line, the edge of the edge of the line closest to the pitch shall be regarded as the boundary. So as soon as any part of the ball touches any part of the boundary line, then a boundary is scored. An object such as a flag, post, or board used merely to highlight the position of a line marked on the ground must be placed beyond the boundary and is not itself to be regarded as being the boundary. And we will have some graphics displaying exactly what this point is trying to describe to us. Here we go. So as noted in the previous slide, the inside edge of the boundary line is the boundary. If we have a fence, then the fence should be along that boundary line, and the inside edge of that fence is the boundary. If we have a rope on top of that line, then the inside edge of that rope is the boundary. That's why if you've ever seen a match whereby the ball is hit in the air and it lands on top of the rope, or if there are little advertising cushions, it lands on those cushions on the full, then that is considered boundary 6. Because why? The inside edge of the line, the inside edge of the rope, or the inside edge of that boundary cushion is the boundary. If there are any posts or flags, then they must be merely indicators of where the boundary is, and they are required to be outside edge of the line. Okay, they are not the boundary, they are indicators as to whereabouts the boundary is. If the boundary is marked by means of an object that is in contact with the ground, the boundary will be the edge of the grounded part of the object, which is nearest to the pitch, as I've described with a rope as well as boundary cushions. Where there is no white line or object providing continuous marking, such as flags, posts, or boards, the boundary shall be the imaginary straight line on the ground joining the two nearest marked points. Okay, this presents a challenge for umpires because we are typically 50 to 70 meters away from the boundary, and we have to unfortunately use the word of the fielder as to whether the ball has gone over the boundary or not. If we don't have a rope, that becomes very difficult. And if there isn't a boundary line marked, it becomes even more difficult. I have been to a field a few years ago where they only had bricks 5 or 10 meters away from each other, demarcating the boundary. And here, point number 4, what the law is telling us is that the boundary needs to be imagined as a straight line between each of those bricks and not a circular line. So that becomes even more complicated for the players to imagine as to where that line is. And so, unfortunately, we have to go with their word. It is a good idea for you to let them know if there isn't a line, if there isn't a rope, if there are only physical markers a few meters away from each other, to tell them that those markers need to be joined up by an imaginary straight line, not a round line, in demarcating where the boundary is. Never take advice from players or spectators outside of the field. It is only for the player who attempted to field the ball or a player right next to the player who attempted to field the ball who you should take your decision from in terms of whether a boundary is scored or not. And of course, if a fielder is in contact with the ball while he or she is in contact with the rope or the line or any object demarcating the boundary, then that will be a boundary 4 or a boundary 6 if the fielder has caught the ball on the full. A boundary that cannot be identified shall be determined by the umpires before the toss. That is one of the duties we need to carry out before the match, and that is why we need to be at the field. Law tells us at least 45 minutes before the scheduled start of play. In our playing conditions at Western Province Cricket Association, we need to be at the field an hour before the scheduled start of play. What about an obstacle within the field of play? What do we do with it? Take, for example, many school fields here in South Africa are shared between cricket and rugby, and so would have rugby poles inside the field of play. Law tells us that an obstacle within the field of play shall not be regarded as a boundary unless so determined by the umpires before the toss. So if you have a set of rugby poles 5 meters inside of the boundary rope, there will be a custom at that field as to what the decision is if the ball hits the rugby poles on the full as well as on the bounce or rolling along the ground. So typically it might be 6 runs if it hits the rugby poles on the full. But if it hits the rugby poles after bouncing or rolling, then obviously it would be 4 runs. But don't make up those rules yourself. When you arrive at the ground for the first time, you need to ask the home captain, who will tell you what the local custom is at that field, whether it is a tree inside the field of play, a set of rugby poles, or anything else that is within the field of play. How do you deal with a ball hitting that obstacle within the field of play? And just reconfirm it at the toss so that the away captain is also in the know. What about a person or animal coming onto the field of play? Law tells us that if this happens while the ball is in play, it shall not be regarded as a boundary unless the umpires determine otherwise at the time that contact between the ball and such a person or animal is made. And the decision shall be made for each separate occurrence. So there is no fixed rule for that one. What you need to decide as the umpires is if the ball had not hit the dog that has walked onto the field of play, would it have gone for 4 or not? If you feel that the ball would have gone and crossed the boundary, then you call and signal boundary 4. If you feel that the ball would not have gone on to cross the boundary, then you simply let play continue. Even if the ball has completely stopped after hitting that dog on the field. Runs from boundaries. I mentioned earlier that there is a boundary 6 and a boundary 4. Let's read more detail about the 2 different boundaries and how they can be scored. A boundary 6 will be scored if the ball has been struck by the bat and is first grounded beyond the boundary without having been in contact with the ground within the field of play. This shall apply even if the ball has previously touched a fielder. So we've seen it a few times where bowler bowls a ball, batter hits the ball, it's in the air, and the fielder right on the boundary attempts to catch it. It bursts through his or her hands and goes over the boundary rope for 6. That is what point number 1 is speaking about, that last sentence in front of us. Quite important, the first sentence, a boundary 6 will be scored if the ball has been struck by the bat. So I will give you a scenario shortly, and you will need to decide for me what the umpire will signal in this scenario. Let's first read the definition for boundary four. A boundary four will be scored when a ball that is grounded beyond the boundary, whether struck by the bat or not, was first grounded within the boundary or has not been struck by the bat. Right, that's an interesting point. So let me give you my scenario. And this is actually something that happened about 8 years ago at the Abu Dhabi 10s, or no, it was called the Dubai 6s at the time, if I'm not mistaken. So bowler bowled a ball, and it was a short pitch delivery, also known as a bouncer. The batter tried to hook the ball, missed the ball with his bat. The ball ricocheted off the top of the batter's helmet and went up in the air over the boundary and landed in the stands without having bounced in the field of play. So let me repeat that. The bowler bowled a bouncer, batter missed the ball hit the helmet of the batter and flew over the field, over the boundary, and landed in the stands. Okay, so the ball has not touched the field of play. What will the umpire signal for that particular incident? There are two signals I'm looking for. What are those two signals? Please all punch your answers into the chat box now, and we will discuss at the end of Abdullah's presentation, just before we start the Q&A session. Or in fact, we will discuss it during the Q&A session, because I'm sure there have been questions already typed up in the chat box. When a boundary is scored, the batting side shall be awarded whichever is the greater of the allowance for the boundary or the runs completed by the batters together with the run in progress if they had already crossed at the instant the boundary is scored. So point number 2 there, what law is saying is that if the ball is hit along the ground, and I've never seen this, but let's just imagine the ball is hit towards a very long boundary, and the batters run and run and run and run, and they have crossed for the 5th run when the ball finally trickles over the boundary rope. So here, what law tells us is, in that scenario, because they've crossed for a 5th run, then the batters will be awarded 5 runs, not 4 runs. Why? Because they have ran more than the allowance of a boundary 4. Law tells us in this point that when a boundary is scored, the batting side shall be awarded the greater of the allowance for the boundary, which would be 4, or the runs completed by the batters together with the run in progress if they had already crossed at the instant that the ball crossed the boundary. So strange one. I've never seen 5 runs ran and then the ball go over the boundary, trickle over the boundary. I have in Australia seen 4 runs being run by batters, but I've never seen more than 4 ran. The scoring of penalty runs by either side is not affected by the scoring of a boundary. So if there is a no ball or a wide or 5 penalty runs awarded to the batting side or to the bowling side, those runs will always count, and the boundary will also always count, unless, of course, what caused the penalty runs also caused the ball to become dead before the boundary was scored. Dula will expand more on dead ball later in this lecture. Now we come to our first animation video, and this animation video, along with all the others that you will see tonight and all other lectures to come, they are available on the Laws of Cricket app, and you can download the app on Android or Apple devices. And the links are on my email that I send to all of you on a daily basis. Right at the bottom, there is a link to the Google Play Store or the Apple Store to download this app. It's got all the laws in it, so pretty much you can have a mobile law book in your hands, and it's also got a quiz that you can test your knowledge of the laws on, and it's also got all of these animation videos. So let's watch our first animation video, and it's all about boundary catches.
Boundary catching. In cricket, a catch is considered to be fair if the fielder is within the field of play and the ball hasn't touched the ground before he or she catches it. The fielder must have complete control both over the ball and his or her own movement. Can a batsman be caught over the boundary? Well, this being cricket, the answer is yes and no. If the fielder catches the ball like this, with part of the body grounded outside the field of play, then the lucky old batsman is not only not out, but also scores a 6. However, if in the same situation the fielder has leapt for the ball from within the boundary, but not from outside it, caught it whilst airborne over the boundary, but managed to throw it up in the air before touching the ground, he or she can then step back into the field of play to complete the catch. It doesn't matter if the fielder throws it to a teammate or completes the catch on his or her own. In this scenario, the same batsman who just scored 6 would in fact have been out. As they frequently say, a funny old game. For oodles more details on this subject, take a look at Laws 19 and 33 in MCC's The Laws of Cricket.
I've been asked before where you can get one of these blue books. The blue books are not for sale anywhere in the world. They are provided by umpires associations all around the world to members of specific umpires associations. So if and when those of you in Cape Town join Western Province Cricket Umpires Association after passing your level 1 exam, the first meeting that you attend as a member, you will be issued with that blue book. Everywhere else around the world, once you've passed your level 1 exam, I will give you the contact details of the Umpires Association closest to you. And when you join that association, hopefully they will have a physical copy of the law book to give you. Otherwise, I do have a PDF copy also on the course material email right at the bottom, just before the links to download the apps is a link to download the PDF of the law book. So another quiz for you guys. Having watched that animation video explain about a boundary catch versus a boundary 6. I'm going to play this video from the Big Bash League probably 3 years ago now, or was it before COVID? I'm not quite sure. No, I think it's more recent. I think it's from 2021 or 2022. Is this a boundary 6 or is it out court? And the commentators give actually a very good description of the law. So I'm going to play it without audio so that the commentators don't give it away. I want you to all decide and type into the chat box whether you think it's a boundary 6 or it's out court, and we will discuss it during the question and answer session. Here we go. Just a note there, where this fielder is outside of the field of play, you will notice that both his feet are in the air when he touches the ball. Okay, let's watch it again, just for all of you to make your decision. You're the TV umpire tonight for this Big Bash League game. Fielder collects the ball inside the field of play, throws it up, and is in the air when he juggles it back into the field of play and completes the catch. So what is your decision, TV umpire? Boundary 6 or out court? You can see a lot of answers coming in. We shall go through them all later in the lecture. Let's talk about overthrows. The law tells us that if the boundary results from an overthrow or from the willful act of a fielder, the runs shall be any runs for penalties awarded to either side. Those will always count, plus the allowance for the boundary, and the runs completed by the batters together with the run in progress if they had already crossed at the instant of the throw. Now, Murray Rasmus was with us last week, Monday, and he alluded to the infamous incident in the 2019 50 over World Cup final, which involved Ben Stokes, and I will be playing that for you. And this will tell us exactly what the law is speaking about here.
Hello and welcome to the Cricket Digest channel. World Cup final match saw one of the most thrilling finish ever witnessed in an ODI match. However, an overthrow in the 50th over of England innings has sparked the debate. A throw from Martin Guptill deflected after hitting Ben Stokes, who was diving to save his wicket, and the ball crossed the boundary line. Many people were confused about how an overthrow is valid after the ball touches the batsman. Point to be considered here is everyone in the field, including the batsman and the umpires, are considered as part of the play, and the fielding side has to take this into consideration. Hence, the ball getting deflected from either a batsman or an umpire will not be called a dead ball. However, if a batsman makes deliberate contact with the ball, or if he deliberately comes in the way of a throw, then the ball will be immediately called dead and the batsman will be given out, obstructing the field. But in the case of Ben Stokes, he had come in the way of throw, but he did not do it deliberately. He was running hard to save his wicket and he did not make deliberate contact with the ball either. It looks unfair to the fielding side in this case, but one should also take into consideration that catching after the ball hits either an umpire or a batsman is valid. Hence, allowing overthrow was well within the laws of the game. But there was a mistake committed by the umpires in this incident. They awarded 6 runs, whereas only 5 runs should have been awarded. According to Cricket Law 19.8, if the body results from an overthrow or from the willful act of a fielder, then the runs scored shall be allowance for the boundary, which is 4 runs in this case, and the runs completed by the batsman plus the run in progress if the batsman had already crossed at the instant of the throw. Ben Stokes and Adil Rashid had completed the first run, but they had not crossed for the second run at the instant of the throw. Hence, only 1 run should have been awarded for running, and in total, 5 runs should have been awarded. Law further states that if the batsman had not crossed at the instant of the throw, then they should be sent to the end they have left. Meaning, in this case, Adil Rashid should have been sent to the striker's end, and Ben Stokes should have been sent to the non-striking end for next delivery. If this law was applied properly, then the New Zealand team would have had a good chance to win the World Cup. Do you feel any different? Do let us know in the comment section.
So very important for us to know our laws and to be able to apply them in pressure situations. And we are fortunate to be able to learn from others' mistakes so that we don't make the same mistake when we are in the middle. That is my presentation for this evening. Laws 18 and 19 done. Now handing over to Abdullah to take us through laws 20 and 21. Over to you, Abdullah.
Thank you so much, Tom. Good evening to you and good evening to the rest of the attendees. So I'm covering 2 laws this evening. Law 20, which is dead ball. And then lastly, I'll be covering the no ball law. So to kick off, dead ball. So what we're going to cover in this law is there are incidents that's going to happen on the field of play, and the ball will then be deemed dead by the law, and anything that happens after the ball becomes dead is irrelevant. So let's have a look what the law deems incidents that deem the ball to become dead. Firstly, the law distinguishes between a ball automatically becoming dead. Something happens, and after it happens, the ball is then automatically dead. And then secondly, there are times where incidents happen and the umpire or either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball to inform everyone that the ball is dead. So we'll first cover when the ball is automatically dead, and then secondly, we will call when to we will cover when the either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. So the ball automatically becomes dead when it finally settles in the hands of either the wicketkeeper or of the bowler. The ball automatically becomes dead when a boundary is scored. The ball automatically becomes dead when a batter is dismissed. Whether played or not, the ball becomes trapped between the bat and person of the batter, or between items of the batter's clothing or equipment. Ball automatically becomes dead when it lodges in the clothing or the equipment of the batter, or it lodges in the clothing of an umpire. Ball automatically becomes dead when there is a horde of penalty runs, if a player returns to the field without permission of the umpires, and we will cover that this law next week, Monday. And also when there's illegal fielding happening. As soon as there's illegal fielding, we will also cover this next week, the ball automatically becomes dead. If a ball while in play hits the protective helmet that was placed behind the keeper, as soon as the ball touched the helmet, the ball automatically becomes dead. And as soon as the match is concluded, the ball automatically becomes dead. So these are the 8 instances where the ball automatically becomes dead. So technically, as soon as it happens, let's use number 7 as an example. As soon as the ball hits the helmet while in play behind the wicketkeeper, the ball automatically becomes dead. But good umpiring technique, because many players do not know the laws. So as soon as that ball makes contact with the helmet while in play that was placed behind the wicketkeeper, either umpire to call and signal dead ball, just to inform everyone that the ball is now dead, and anything that happens after that is irrelevant. Yesterday we spoke about the calling of over and the calling of time. Law tell us that before you call over or before the bowler umpire calls time, the bowler umpire needs to wait for the ball to be dead. And only once the ball is dead, now the bowler umpire can either call over or time. The ball is also considered dead according to the laws if the bowler's umpire, in his or her opinion, the fielding side and both batters at the wicket have now ceased to regard the ball as still in play. If that is the case, and according to the bowler's umpire, both the fielding side and both batters have ceased the ball to be in play, the ball will then also be dead. I earlier spoke about when the ball automatically becomes dead, when it finally settles in the hands of either the bowler or the wicketkeeper. So who decides if the ball is dead or not? That is for the umpire to decide whether the ball is finally settled or not. So I've now covered the instances where the ball automatically becomes dead, and good umpiring technique is, because players don't know the law, is to call and signal dead ball as soon as it happens, like the ball hitting the helmet behind the keeper, because many players do not know the law. So if you, by calling and signaling dead ball, players will hear it and they will know the ball is dead, and then anything that happens after the call of dead ball is irrelevant. Now we're going to cover instances that happens where either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. So what are those instances? If either umpire needs to intervene in a case of unfair play, either umpire decides this unfair play that is happening, the umpire then to verbally loudly call and signal dead ball, then the umpire needs to then intervene and discuss it with his or her colleague. But the point I'm trying to make is call and signal dead ball. You'll then go investigate the case of unfair play. Another instance where either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball if there's a possible serious injury to either a player or an umpire. And the emphasis in 20.4.2.2 is serious injury. The umpire needs to make a judgment call whether the injury is serious, and if yes, umpire then immediately needs to call and signal dead ball. By the moment the umpire calls and signal dead ball, anything that happens after that call is irrelevant. So again, emphasis on serious injury. Just an example of a serious injury is if a bowler bowls a short ball, batter ducks, ball hits the batter against the helmet. Batter then goes down onto the floor. This is an example of what I see as that is a good example of a possible serious injury to a player. And if that is the case, either umpire to call and signal dead ball. Again, emphasis on serious injury. If either umpire decides to leave his or her normal position to go and consult with his or her colleague, before leaving your position, call and signal dead ball. And then go leave your position and then go over to your colleague to consult. Either umpire to call and signal dead ball if one or both bails falls from the striker's wicket before the striker had an opportunity to play at the ball. And importantly, is it's either one or both bails needs to fall from the striker's wicket. If that is the case, either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball, although the strikers in umpire would be in the best position to call it, but there's nothing stopping the bowlers in umpire to call it if one or both bails falls from the striker's wicket. You need to call and signal dead ball. Either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball if the striker is not ready for the delivery of the ball, and let's say the ball gets delivered, needs to make no attempt to play at the ball. There are times where the bowler is running in and then a butterfly flies across the striker's eye line. If that is the case, striker then needs to back away. Umpire then needs to call and signal a dead ball because the striker was now distracted. But importantly, if a butterfly flies across the striker and the striker now pulls away, the striker needs to make no attempt to play at the ball. Also, there are times where a striker can be distracted by any noise or movement while preparing to receive or receiving the delivery. There are some times where the bowler is running in and someone walks across the side screen. Striker in those instances are then distracted, can happen. Umpire to call and signal dead ball. If there's an instance of a deliberate attempt to either distract the striker or deceive or obstruct the striker, we will cover these laws in our level 2 and our level 3 courses in detail. But if this happens, either umpire to immediately call and signal dead ball. If a bowler, whilst running in, accidentally drops the ball before delivering the ball, either umpire to call and signal dead ball. If a bowler throws the ball towards the striker's end before entering his or her delivery stride, either umpire to call and signal dead ball. The ball does not leave the bowler's hand for any reason other than if the bowler tries to attempt to run out the non-striker. But if this is the case, the bowler goes through the motion, the hand goes, arm goes over, but the bowler does not deliver the ball. If that is the case, umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. Satisfied that the ball, while in play, cannot be recovered, either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. Either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball if the umpire decides that because of a person, an animal, or an object within the field came within the field of play, and either side would then have been disadvantaged by this person, animal, or object coming onto the field of play. If the umpires feel that is the case, there is a disadvantage to either side because of this person, animal, or object, either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. Either umpire also needs to call and signal dead ball if the striker wants to play at the ball, but no part of the striker is, whether grounded or raised, remains within the pitch. The striker, the bowler bowled the ball, and let's say the ball rolled off the pitch onto the outfield. The striker then leaves the pitch to go play at the ball. So if there's no part of the striker where the ground or to raise, still within the pitch, the striker's now off the pitch, either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. And lastly, either umpire needs to call and signal dead ball if UC is required to do so, any of the laws that's not included in all the above points. I'm now going to play you a video, and we've now gone through the points where a ball automatically becomes dead, or when an umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. This is going to be one of those instances. You now going to be the umpire, and in the chat box, I want you to put your whether you would give it out or not out, or what, or you'd say dead ball, or is it run out, and then give your reason why you're saying dead ball, why you're saying run out. So let's look at the video, and in the chat box, put down your answer, and we'll discuss it in our Q&A session. Okay, put in the chat box dead ball or and why, or run out or why. We're now going to look at another video. It's a fairly lengthy video, but I'm going to fast forward to the incident where Johnny Biestro gets dismissed.
Yeah! Done in this time. Australia's one win away from securing its first series victory in England.
Spirit is now at the centre of furious debate.
Singing out, same old Aussies, always cheating.
There were ugly scenes at the home of cricket as Australians left the field at lunch on the final day. The normally genteel long room reached boiling point as the members vented their disgust.
Some of the stuff that was coming out of the members' mouth was really disappointing, and I wasn't just going to stand by and cop it. I just talked to a few of them throwing out some pretty big allegations, and I just called them up on it.
This was the incident that sparked the fire.
Oh, now this is going to be interesting.
Before the ball had been deemed dead by the umpire, quick-thinking keeper Alex Carey caught his English counterpart Johnny Bairstow napping. The stumping was certainly within the rules of the game, but whether it was within its spirit is now at the centre of furious debate.
If the shoe was on the other foot, I would probably just have to have a little think around the sort of whole spirit of the game and things like that. So, look, it's happened, it's out.
Is it going to affect relations between the teams?
Well, I can't imagine we'll be having a beer anytime soon, if that's what you're asking.
The Australian captain defended Carey's actions and the decision not to withdraw the appeal.
I thought it was totally fair play. That's how the rule is. I know some people might disagree.
You see Johnny do it all the time. He did it day one to Davey Warner. He did it in 2019 to Steve. It's a really common thing for keepers to do.
Cricket Australia said its players were verbally abused and physically touched as they made their way through the members' area.
The MCC came and apologised for their behaviour of some of the members.
3 members have been suspended pending an investigation by the Marylebone Cricket Club, which described the scenes.
The last law that I'm covering this evening is the no ball law. And so what we cover in this particular law is no balls according to the laws of cricket. There are certain no balls that you'll find in certain playing conditions for certain competitions, like in T20 and 50 over cricket. there is a requirement to have certain number of fielders within the circle, and if you don't comply or having the correct number of players inside the circle, playing conditions for limited over cricket that was incorporated for those competitions. What we're covering in this lecture are the laws of cricket, and according to the laws of cricket, what are no balls. So firstly, when it comes to the mode of delivery, the bowler and umpire needs to ask the bowler, as soon as the bowler gives his or her cap to the umpire, bowler and umpire needs to ask, bowler, are you right-handed or left-handed? And are you going to bowl over or around the wicket? After getting that information, and let's say the bowler say, I'm left-handed and I'm going to bowl over the wicket. You then need to relay that information to the striker. So you'll verbally tell the striker, batter or Johnny, bowler's left arm over the wicket. So that's the umpire needs to ask and needs to relay that message to the bowler, to the batter. So if the bowler then changes his or her mode of delivery, i.e., the bowler, let's say, said to you, I'm bowling left, I'm left-handed, and then suddenly the bowler bowls right-handed to the batter. If that is the case, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Or if the bowler said to you, I'm bowling over the wicket, and then he or she suddenly bowls around the wicket, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Bowler must notify the umpire if there is a change in his or her mode of delivery. The bowler can change as often as he or she wants. There's nothing stopping a bowler, and I've had a bowler or two that, depending on whether it's a right-hand or left-handed batter. So if it was a left-handed, right-handed batter, this particular bowler would bowl a left arm. And if it was a left-handed batter, he would bowl right arm. So if a bowler wants to change his or her mode, no problem. But before changing, he or she needs to notify the umpire, because the umpire needs to notify the striker. And if they don't notify you that he or she is going to change or change his or her mode, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. In the first paragraph, we spoke about over and around the wicket. So how do you know which side is over and which side is round? In the next slide, I will show you how do you determine whether a bowler is bowling over the wicket or around the wicket. The law does not allow underarm bowling at all. There are exceptions if by special agreement before the game, but otherwise underarm bowling not permitted according to the law. The law also wants the delivery to be fair and the ball not to be thrown. Earlier I spoke about over and around the wicket, and how do you determine which is over, which is around. So when it comes to determining whether a bowler is bowling over or around the wicket, we're going to start with the first picture from left. So you don't look at the batter, you only look at the bowler and where the bowler is coming from. So it's irrelevant whether the bowler is the batter is a left-handed batter or a right-handed batter. Don't look at the batter. You need to look at the bowler and where the bowler is running from. So if you look at the arrow, the arrow where it points, that's where the batter is standing or the striker is standing. So now, this is a right-handed bowler. And this is how I determine whether a bowler is bowling around or over the wicket. You need to look at where the bowling hand is. If the bowling hand is further away from the stumps, the bowler is bowling around the wicket. If the bowling hand is closer to the stumps, the bowler is bowling over the wicket. So just if you can visualize this, just look at the first diagram on your left. It's a right-hand bowler, so the ball is in his or her right hand. So the bowler is now running in, so visualize this. As the bowler gets close to the wicket and about to deliver the ball, and remember the ball is in the bowler's right hand. Which hand is closer to the stumps? Yes, the left hand is closer to the stumps, i.e., or the right hand is further from the stumps. So if the bowling hand is further from the stumps, the bowler is bowling around the wicket. So the opposite now, the second picture is still a right-handed bowler, but look where the bowler is bowling now from. So now if the bowling hand is closer to the stumps, so if you can visualize this, the bowling hand is the closest to the stumps, which is the right hand, and the left hand is further away from the stumps. So if the bowling hand is closer to the stumps, the bowler is bowling over the wicket. So in the first picture on your left, you'll inform the striker, batter, bowler is bowling right arm round the wicket. In the second pick, you will say, batter, bowler is bowling right arm over the wicket. So you look at the bowling hand. If it's further away from the stumps, it's round. If it's close, the closest to the stumps of the two hands, it is then over the wicket. The same principle will apply to a left-handed bowler. Again, don't look at the striker, whether it's right or left. You need to look at the bowler, and you need to look at which hand the ball is in. So the third picture from your left, if you just visualize it, this is now a left-handed bowler. So the ball is in the bowler's left hand. So as the bowler is running in, the bowling hand, is it further from the stump or closest to the stump? The bowling hand is further from the stumps, meaning this bowler is bowling around the wicket. In the last picture, or the first from your right, visualize the ball in the bowler's left hand. The bowling hand, the left hand is closer to the stumps. The right hand is further from the stumps. Because the bowling hand is closer to the stumps, bowler is bowling over the wicket. So what happens if a ball gets thrown or delivered underarm? What do the umpires do? The law tells us that if a ball gets thrown, the umpire needs to immediately call and signal no ball. Then what do? The bowler's in umpire then, because the ball was thrown, needs to warn the bowler and then indicate to the bowler, this is your first and final warning for throwing. This warning, this first and final, to apply throughout the innings. So let's say this is the first inning, so it will apply throughout the innings. Also, you'll inform the batters, and importantly, also inform the fielding captain that the bowler is now on the first and final for throwing. Or it can be underarm, the ball delivered underarm as well. So what happens in that same innings? The bowler now throws the ball again. What do the umpires now do? Again, you'll call and signal no ball. But there are further actions to be done. You now need to direct the captain of the fielding side to suspend the bowler. You've given the bowler first and final for throwing early in the innings. Now in the same innings, the bowler throws again. Now you need to tell the captain, sorry, captain, you need to remove the bowler from the attack. If there are balls still to be bowled in the over, balls to then be bowled by another bowler. And this bowler that's now completing the over should not have bowled the previous over, nor should this bowler be allowed to bowl the next over. And the suspended bowler shall not be allowed to bowl again in our example, this first innings. Yes, he or she is allowed to bowl in the second innings, and they'll start from a clean slate again in the second innings. And you'll inform everyone of the action that you just took. And you'll report it to the governing body. So what happens if the bowler, before entering his or her delivery stride, throws the ball towards the striker's end before entering the delivery stride? The law tells us that the umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. We've just covered it in the previous law. So if before the bowler enters his or her delivery stride, the bowler actually throws the ball towards the striker's end, either umpire to call and signal dead ball. When it comes to the feet, let's see how the law covers how we should handle the feet. So there is a difference when it comes to your front foot and your back foot. Let's start with the back foot first. When it comes to the back foot, the law tells us that the back foot must land within and it should not be touching the return crease. So back foot, land within and not touching the return crease. That is what the law say when it comes to the back foot. If it lands within the return crease and it's not touching the return crease, the back foot now, it's fair delivery. When it comes to the front foot, so when it comes to the back foot, the return crease is the important crease that you need to look at. And the back foot should not be touching the return crease. When it comes to the front foot, now the popping crease is the important crease. So now the law tells us when it comes to the front foot must land, the first landing, there must be some part of the front foot, whether it's grounded or raised, behind the popping crease. So upon first landing of the foot, not where the foot ends up, the first landing of the foot, there must be some part of that foot behind whether grounded or raised, behind the popping crease. Also, when that front foot lands the first time, it needs to be on the same side of the imaginary line joining the two middle stumps as the return crease. Bullet point number 2, there is a picture later in later slides that will illustrate bullet point number 2 clearly. We're now going to go through a few pictures and to illustrate exactly how the laws work when it comes to the feet. So imagine this is a right-hand bowler bowling over the wicket. So we'll start with the front foot first. And which line goes with the front foot? The popping crease goes with the front foot. And what is the question that we need to ask ourselves? Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the popping crease? The answer to that question is yes. So in this picture, we're happy with the front foot. Let's go to the back foot. Is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? Yes, the back foot is touching the return crease. So what does that mean? This is a no ball because the back foot is touching the return crease. Let's start with the front foot. Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the popping crease? Yes, the whole part of the front foot is behind the popping crease, so we're happy with the front foot. The back foot. Is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No. There you can see the back foot, the heel is raised. Upon first landing, it's not touching the return crease, so we're happy with the back foot. So this is a fair delivery. This is now a left-arm bowler bowling around the wicket. Let's start with the back foot first. Is there any part of the back foot whether touching the return crease? The back foot, no, it's not touching the return crease, so we're happy with the back foot. Let's go to the front foot. Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the popping crease? Yes, there's a big part of the front foot behind the popping crease, so we are happy with the front foot. So this is a fair delivery. Again, you need to, when it comes to the front foot and the back foot, there are different creases that we need to look at. The back foot, we need to look at the return crease, and the front foot, we need to look at the popping crease. So you can see the front foot is on the other side of the return crease, but we're not interested when it comes to the front foot looking at the return crease. We only interested when it comes to the front foot looking at the popping crease. Again, left-hand bowler bowling around the wicket. Let's look at the front foot. Is there any part of the front foot where the grounded or raised behind the popping crease? Yes, we're happy. Back foot. Any part of the back foot touching the return crease? Yes, it is touching the return crease. That's why this delivery is a no ball. We start with the back foot. Any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, we're happy with the back foot. Front foot. Any part of the front foot where the grounded or raised behind the popping crease? And when you judge the popping crease, you need to judge it the back edge of the popping crease, not the front edge of the popping crease. You need to judge the back edge of the popping crease. So is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes, you can see there is a portion behind the back edge of the popping crease. Hence, this is a fair delivery. Back foot, is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, so we're happy with the back foot. Front foot, is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? No, there's no part behind the back edge of the popping crease. Hence, this is a no ball. Back foot, any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, happy back foot. Front foot, any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease. You can see the whole of the front foot is over the back edge of the popping crease. So this is a no ball. Again, I mentioned it earlier. You need to judge the first landing. Let's assume this is the first landing. So upon first landing, if there's no part of the front foot where the grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease, then it's a no ball. But you often find bowlers, upon first landing, they'll have their foot behind the popping crease, and then the foot will slide and ends up, let's say, in this position. Even though the foot is now way over the back edge of the popping crease, but if upon first landing, the part of the foot where the grounded or raised was behind the back edge of the popping crease, it would be a fair delivery. So emphasis on first landing and not where the ball ends up. Back foot, we're happy. It's not touching the return crease. Any part of the front foot where the grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes, there is a portion behind, so we're happy with the front foot. So this is a fair delivery. Yes, the foot is raised, but the laws say it can be raised or it can be on the ground. So whether grounded or raised, as long as this part of the foot behind the back edge of the popping crease. We're happy with the back foot, not touching the return crease. The front foot, is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? No, there's no part of the foot behind the back edge of the popping crease. Hence, no ball. Earlier, I mentioned that second bullet point that wants the foot also not to be over the imaginary line from middle stump to middle stump. So if you can visualize this being a left-arm bowler bowling over the wicket, and just look where that front foot lands. Is left arm over, so the front foot lands on the other side of the middle stump. If this is the case, the law sees this as the bowler changing mode of delivery. So now the bowler is bowling around the wicket. And because of that, you need to call and signal no ball. I've never encountered this, but it is part of the law. Definitely there's been bowlers doing this. And I can only see spin bowlers doing this. I can't imagine a fast bowler doing this. Maybe not impossible, but definitely spinners that's trying to come close to the stumps. If this happens and the foot is on the other side of the imaginary line, call and signal no ball. So what happens? A bowler breaking the wicket in delivering the ball. So the law tells us that either umpire to call and signal no ball if the bowler breaks the wicket with any part of his or her body after the ball comes into before the bowler completes the stride after the delivery stride. So the bowler puts the wicket down Bails are on the floor. It doesn't have to be both bails. If one bail is on the floor and it was with the body, any part of the body, either umpire to call and signal no ball. Also, the law allows for any clothing. You'll often find bowlers bowling with a small towel to keep their hands dry. If that towel or any other object falls from the bowler and it falls on the wicket, breaking the wicket, either umpire to call and signal no ball. So what happens if a ball bounces more than once or the ball starts to roll along the ground? So the umpire needs to call and signal no ball. If the umpire and usually in this case, the strikers in umpire would be in the best position. Nothing stopping the bowlers in umpire, but the strikers in umpire would be in the best position to make that call, because from a side-on view, you would be in a better position to see if the ball bounces more than once or if the ball rolls along the ground before reaching the popping crease. So importantly here is the ball needs to bounce a second time before reaching the popping crease. If you can visualize a bowler bowling a very short ball and it bounces in front of him or her, and then it goes towards the batter, and a second time before reaching the popping crease, it bounces a second time. If that is the case, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball. So it needs to bounce a second time or bounce more than once before reaching the popping crease. Or the bowler bowls the ball almost on his or her toes and now starts rolling towards the batter. If that is the case and it rolls before reaching the popping crease, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Or the bowler bowls the ball and it pitches either wholly or partially off the pitch before reaching the striker's wicket or before reaching the bowling crease. If that is the case, it either needs to be wholly off the pitch or even partially off the pitch. If that is the case, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. So what happens if the ball causes the striker to leave the pitch, or the ball actually that was bowled by the bowler comes to rest in front of the striker? It stops in front of the striker. The previous laws spoke about the ball rolling towards the striker, and you then needs to call and signal no ball. In this instance, the ball now actually comes to a stop before the striker's wicket. So if that is the case, the law tells us if it stops, let's say you visualize this, bowler bowls the ball almost on his or her toes and it now rolls towards the striker and it stops before the striker's wicket. If that is the case, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball, and immediately after that, call and signal dead ball. These two calls needs to be within a millisecond of each other, so meaning it needs to be no ball, dead ball. So quickly it needs to be after each other. So in this instance, ball actually coming to a standstill before reaching the striker's wicket. Also, another example, the bowler bowls the ball and the ball actually goes off the pitch and comes to a standstill off the pitch, and then the striker actually leaves the pitch to go play at the ball. In that case, you immediately call and signal no ball, and split second later call and signal dead ball. So what happens if a fielder intercepts a delivery? Law tells us that if a fielder intercepts a delivery, if a ball makes contact with the fielder or any part of the fielder's person before either striking the bat or person of the striker or before passing the striker's wicket, either umpire to immediately call and signal no ball, and a split second later to call and signal dead ball. This is an example of this. Let's say a spin bowler bowling, and you have a short leg fielder standing 3 meters from the bat. The bowler then bowls a ball, and it then, before striking the bat or person of the striker or passing the striker's wicket, the ball actually, let's say, hit the foot of the silly point fielder. What do the umpire need to do? Immediately call and signal no ball, and a split second later call and signal dead ball. So these two calls happens quickly after each other. No ball, dead ball, quickly after each other. What happens if a ball bounces over head height of the striker? According to the laws of cricket, if a ball after pitching passes or would have passed over head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease, according to the laws, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball. But this is according to the laws of cricket, according to many playing conditions for many competitions, and you've obviously seen it on TV. What happens if a bowler bowls a short ball and it goes above the head height of the bowler, of the batter standing upright at the popping crease? What do the umpires show? The umpire shows wide. Let's say if it's a T20 game and it's the first one in the over that goes over head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease, you'll see the strikers in umpire showing wide, and the bowlers in umpire will then signal wide to the scorers and show one for the over. So according to the laws of cricket, it's actually a no ball, but in many playing conditions for many competitions across the world, it is actually a wide ball, and the playing conditions override the law for those particular competitions. There are also other instances where you can call and signal no ball, the position of the keeper, limitation of onside fielders not to encroach on the pitch, dangerous bowling of dangerous and unfair short pitch deliveries, and bowling of dangerous and unfair non-pitching deliveries. The first 3 bullet points, there are pictures coming up that will illustrate what is meant by when you call no ball with regards to the position of the keeper, limitation of onside fielders, and fielders not to encroach on the pitch. So the keeper, look at where the keeper is taking the ball. So the law wants the keeper to wait for the ball to pass the stumps, then take the ball and take off the bails. In this instance, because the keeper's now encroaching, and because of this encroachment, strikers in umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Keeper's not allowed to take the ball in front of the stumps. Keeper needs to wait for the ball to pass the stumps, unless the ball actually touches either the bat or the person of the striker, or the striker attempts to take a run. If that is the case, then the keeper can come in front of the stumps, no problem. But the keeper usually needs to wait for the ball to pass the stumps, then take off the bails. So in this instance, this will be a no ball, keeper taking the ball in front of the stumps. According to the laws of cricket, you are not allowed, or you're allowed a maximum of only 2 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side. So the dark shaded green area, let's say this is a right-handed batter. So on the leg side, you only allowed a max of 2 behind the popping crease on the leg side. So in this pick, the law say only a max of 2 behind the popping crease on the leg side. How many fielders are here behind the popping crease on the leg side? There are 3 fielders. And that's why the umpire is signaling no ball, because of having 3 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side. Good umpiring technique. If this should be you, I know this is for illustrative purposes, because they want you to see the umpire signaling a no ball, but practically this should happen on the field, and you see this short leg fielder actually blocking your view of the stumps and the popping crease. It would be best for the umpire to go stand at on the offside to have a better view of the wicket and the popping crease. When it comes to encroachment or by a fielder, the law wants a fielder not to encroach onto the pitch until the ball passes the bat or the ball touches the bat or person of the batter. So this is the law. This is not allowed. Fielder is not allowed to come onto the pitch unless it either passes the bat or touches the bat or person of the striker. In this case, the bowlers in umpire would be in the best position to call and signal no ball. Revoking a call of no ball. Umpire shall revoke the call of no ball if dead ball is called, example, a bowler overstepping, but the bowler does not deliver the ball. If I cover this under dead ball, if that is the case, the bowler don't deliver the ball, even though the bowler overstepped with the front foot, there was no part of the front foot behind the popping crease, the umpire will call and signal dead ball. If of the same delivery, there is a no ball call and a wide call. So let's say the bowler bowls a front foot no ball and the bowler also bowled the ball down the leg side. So they are okay, let me use another example. Bowler bowls a front foot no ball and it bowls a short ball which goes a meter above the head of the striker. We know in many playing conditions across the world that it will be called a wide, and according to the laws it's a no ball, but in many playing conditions we call it a wide. So now you'll have a no ball and a wide of the same delivery. Law tell us that no ball to override the wide. So you'll ignore the wide call, you will then signal no ball to the scorers. Ball does not become dead on the call of no ball. What is the penalty for a no ball? There's a penalty of 1 run to be awarded on the call of no ball. Unless the call is revoked, the penalty shall stand, even though a batter can be dismissed of a no ball. We'll see in the next slide how a batter can be dismissed of a no ball. And it shall be in addition to any run scored, any boundary allowances, or any penalty runs that you may award. No ball not to count as 1 for the over. And then lastly, how can you be dismissed of a no ball? There are 3 ways. Firstly, hit the ball twice. Secondly, obstructing the field. And lastly, run out. These are the only 3 modes of dismissals that a batter can be dismissed of if a no ball is called. Hit the ball twice, obstructing the field, and run out. Tom, thank you so much. That is my portion for this evening. I'm now handing back to you.
Thank you very much, Dula. A very thorough session this evening, covering only 4 laws, but 4 very important laws. Let me now proceed to unmute everybody, or at least activate the microphones and the cameras so that we can all join in an interactive question and answer session. Please bear with me while I do that. Abdullah, I think what you can do while I do that is go through our first question, which was the boundary catch or boundary 6 in the Big Bash League, please.
Copy that, Tom. Give me. I'm going through the chat box. Let me just go down the chat box and see.
We had a few boundary 6s. We had a few catches.
Yeah. Actually, the first one we did was whether it's the ball striking the helmet, whether it's boundary 6 or boundary 4.
Correct, correct.
Okay, that's the first one, and I'll cover that one first, Tom. So there was, so in Tom's example, the bowler bowled the short ball, the ball ricocheted off the helmet and went on the full over the boundary. So was it, what signals would you make? There are a bye and a 4. There's leg byes and 4, Tom. There's signal boundary 6 and leg bye. 6 byes, leg bye 6, leg bye 6, 4 leg byes, 4 leg byes, 4 leg byes, leg bye and signal 6, leg bye 6, leg bye 6, 4 leg byes, leg bye 6. There's lots of leg bye 6s, Tom. Most of it are leg bye 6s.
So let's refer to the law on this one. And the law is pretty clear, and I thought I'd emphasized it enough, but maybe I didn't. If we go back to our presentation on the boundaries, it is pretty clear when it says that a boundary 6 can only be scored off the bat. Okay, so in my example, remember I mentioned that the ball has been missed by the batter and it has come off his helmet. So that means that a boundary 6 cannot be scored. Why? Because the ball did not hit the bat or was not struck by the bat. Okay, here's the slide that gives us the answers. A boundary 6 will be scored if the ball has been struck by the bat. So has the ball been struck by the bat in this example? No, it has not. It has ricocheted off the top of the batter's helmet. He missed it when attempting a hook shot. Then we read about the boundary 4. Boundary 4 will be scored when a ball that is grounded beyond the boundary, whether struck by the bat or not, was first grounded within the boundary or has not been struck by the bat. So there is the answer to your question. It is not a boundary 6, it is a boundary 4 because it was not struck by the bat. And because it was not struck by the bat, it hit the person of the striker. The correct signals are leg bye and boundary 4. Okay, leg bye and boundary 4. Abdullah, next we had the catch on the boundary by a fielder in the BBL. I'm going to play it, and while I'm playing it, maybe you can talk us through the law and give us the correct answer for this particular scenario. In fact, what I'm going to do, Abdullah, is I'm going to play it with sound because...
Sound, yes. The commentators actually explains it perfectly, yes.
Correct. I think Glenn Maxwell was on commentary and he explains it perfectly well. So here goes.
I'm pretty sure this is down. So if his feet are planted when he takes the catch again outside the rope, it's 6. So if he makes the first contact from where he jumped inside the rope, and then when the last contact is made, he's back inside the rope, it's out. So as long as when he threw it up a second time, his feet were in the air, yes, last point of contact has to be back in. So when he's outside the boundary rope, when he takes the ball again, his feet must be in the air when he throws it up again. Effectively, he can throw it up 300 times as long as his feet in the air.
There we go. Effectively, he could throw it up 300 times outside of the boundary as long as his feet are in the air. So the law states that the first contact must be within the field of play And the final contact with the ball when completing the catch must be within the field of play. As we've seen on that video, a lot can happen between the first and the second contact, and sorry, the last contact with the ball. But as long as the player is not grounded outside the field of play when in contact with the ball, then the batter will be out caught. So the correct answer for this scenario is out caught. A lot of people don't agree with that law. It does look rather strange that you can juggle the ball outside of the field of play as long as your feet are not grounded beyond the boundary, and then you can complete the catch inside the field of play. I'm one of those that don't really agree with that. It just does not look right to me that that should be out caught. But as the law currently stands, it was correctly given out court by the TV umpire in that match. Okay. I think we have a couple of questions in the chat box, but what we will do is we will complete all our quiz questions first. And the next one, if I'm not mistaken, Abdullah, was the Johnny Bairstow incident, was it?
No, Tom, it was the possible injury to the batter. Was he run out or not?
Correct. Please take us through that one. I will play it for you without sound, because that sound.
Yeah, but there's no commentary, so you can play with the sound. Doesn't matter.
I would just like you to talk through the incident while I play it. So that's why I'm going to play it without sound, Abdullah.
Okay. Batter getting hit on the hand. Batter then take a stroll, throwing the ball down, taking then a stroll. Ball is still in play. Batter goes, taking a stroll outside the crease, throwing his bat down. So now you need to ask yourself, and we've covered this in the dead ball law, which portion of the dead ball law? It says if there's a possible serious injury to a player or an umpire, either umpire needs to immediately call and signal dead ball. So now the question is, looking at this, and the law tells us a possible serious injury to a player. So looking at this instance, would you say the ball hitting the batter's finger or hand, is this an example of a possible serious injury to the batter? If your answer to that question is yes, you need to call and signal dead ball. And as soon as you've called and signaled dead ball, anything that happens after that is irrelevant. If your answer to that question, this is not a serious injury, then don't call and signal a dead ball. Ball is still in play. Batter needs at all times needs to stay behind the popping crease. So now the question is, would you consider this a possible serious injury to the batter? I haven't seen any of the answers, Tom, but I'll give my opinion. My opinion is that I don't see this as a possible serious injury to the batter. Yes, the batter gets wrapped on the knuckles, but in my opinion, I don't see this as a serious injury for me to call and signal dead ball. So ball is still alive. Batter needs at all times to stay behind the popping crease. Because batter's not behind the popping crease, I would give this batter out, run out. Over, Tom.
Happy Dula, I agree with you there. The fact that he was able to still signal to the dressing room for treatment, for me, tells me that it was not a serious injury. When a player is seriously injured, he or she falls to the ground and cannot even signal to the dressing room. His partner will have to signal for him, or the physio will realize immediately that there is trouble. And so that instance, we could see that it wasn't a serious injury. Next, I'm going to play the Johnny Bairstow incident. And if you can also give us your input on this one, please, Abdullah, as I play it without volume.
So yeah,
There were ugly scenes at the home of cricket.
so we've covered under the dead ball law when a ball automatically becomes dead when it finally settles in the hands of the wicketkeeper or of the bowler. That is a call for the umpires to make, whether the ball finally settles or not. That was one instance. The other instance is when it is clear to the bowlers and umpire that the fielding side and both batters has ceased to regard the ball as still in play. So in this instance, if you look at the carry, almost immediately after collecting the ball, he threw the ball towards the stumps. So Carey still feels that the ball is still in play. So this ball is then still in play. So that's that part section of the dead ball law. Did the ball finally settle in the hands of the keeper? No, it did not finally settle. That was almost immediately when Carey released it. Look there how quickly he released it. So that ball is not finally settled. So according to me, this ball is still alive, and Carey's got all the right to throw the ball at the stumps. And in this instance, and we'll get to the stumping law next week, Johnny Bairstow is out stumped. Over,
Thanks,
Tom.
I think that's all the scenarios we asked for input from the audience this evening.
Yes.
Thank you very much for clarifying those incidents. So now I'm going to go through the rest of the chat box to see where we have questions. Deepak asks if we can share a few examples of Law 20.4.2.12. And I did go and check what 20.4.2.11, is. We need to call and signal dead ball when we are satisfied as umpires that the ball in play cannot be recovered. So, Deepak, this law used to be the lost ball law, but it has since 2017 been incorporated into the dead ball law. So example that comes to mind is some fields have in them a manhole for drains, or where there is a tap that waters the outfield. So if, for example, the ball within the field of play goes down one of those manholes and the fielder or any player or umpire cannot grab the ball out of that drain hole, then the player used to be able to call lost ball, and now it is for the umpires to call and signal dead ball. Another example I've heard of, I wasn't part of this match, but there was a snake on a field and the ball went towards the snake. The fielders were too scared to retrieve the ball close to the snake. So the umpire had to call and signal dead ball. Abdullah, I don't know if you have any other examples of a ball being irretrievable in the field of play.
I can give an actual example that happened to me, Tom. It was, I think, 2016. It was in Namibia. It was a provincial game between Namibia and Free State. So on this particular ground, on the field of play, there were, I'm not sure, it's called meerkatte. I'm not sure. I know it's Afrikaans word, but I'm not sure if that is the name of this animal. But it's called it's a meerkat. Those animals that stick their heads out of the hole and look. Is it called a meerkat in English? I'm not too sure. But anyway.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so on the field of play, about 20 meters within the boundary, there were probably about 6 of these meerkat holes. And occasionally they would visit us while play is in progress. They would just stick their heads above the ground, observe the cricket for a while, go back down the hole. And as fate would have it, the ball went down one of these holes. And none of the fielding sides were prepared to put their hand in this hole because these meerkatte do have very sharp teeth. And as when it went down the hole, we called and signal dead ball. We had to change the ball because the fielders weren't prepared to put their hands down the hole. Over, Tom.
Great example. Thanks, Dula. Next question is from Francis John. It relates to a fair catch. If a striker hits a ball in the air just short of the fielder who runs and dives to make the catch, and in the same motion as catching it, he then throws the ball in the air to celebrate, is the striker out caught or not? How long does a fielder need to have control of the ball, Abdullah, for him or her to claim a fair catch? We will deal with it in detail. There's a nice video coming up next week in the catch law, the court law. But if you maybe can answer Francis's question quickly this evening.
Yeah, Francis, it's a judgment call by the umpires. You can get together to consult, discuss what you've seen. What you need to look at is the player in control of the ball and of his or her movements. So as soon as the player is in control of the ball and his or her movements, the batter is then dismissed, the ball then becomes dead. So what you need to look at is, was the player, and you need to ask that question looking at the scenario. Ask yourself, was the fielder in control of the ball and his or her movements? If your answer is yes, so as soon as then that catch is completed, the ball is then dead, batters dismissed. We've covered under the dead ball law this evening. As soon as a batter is dismissed, ball becomes dead. Anything that happens after that is irrelevant. So you need to ask yourself, incomplete of the ball and of movement. If yes, ball then became dead. Anything that happens after that is irrelevant. So you visualizing this scenario, now visualize it. Ask yourself, is fielder in control? Yes or no, of ball and movement? If yes, out. If no, not out. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. The next two questions refer to a bowler throwing, so a suspect bowling action. Let's read Mohammed's question first, and then I'll read Yanita's question, and you can answer both of them, please, Abdullah. Mohammed asks, can you give a short explanation on a bowler throwing the ball in relation to the bowling action? So maybe if you can mention the angle flex that is allowed on the elbow. And then Yanita asks, what happens if the umpires do not signal no ball if it is clear that throwing occurs? Do the batters have any recourse to report to umpires? Very contentious subject, this one, Abdullah. Please take us through it. You're still on mute, Abdullah.
Sorry, rookie area. Firstly, I'm going to start with what the law say with regards to throwing the ball and the interpretation, and then I'm going to get to the playing conditions across at international cricket, at provincial cricket, and for many competitions across the world. So when it comes to the laws of cricket, and I touched on it earlier in my presentation, where all the law tell us, if in the opinion of the umpire, the ball is thrown. That's all the law say. In your opinion, the ball is thrown. You need to call and signal no ball, and you need to give the bowler first and final warning. If it happens again in that innings, you then suspend the bowler. So all the law speaks about is thrown. So again, now it's a judgment call. Maybe you can look at an action and think, oh, that looks okay. Someone else will look at the action and think it is. It looks like the bowler is throwing. It is difficult, it's contentious, because you bring, I'm now referring to the laws of cricket, you bring interpretation into this. As I said, some might think it looks like a throw, some think it's not a throw, some think it would be okay. Yeah, it can be very contentious in the laws of cricket, because all the law tell us is, if in your opinion, the ball is thrown. So you need to be 100% sure that the ball is thrown. You can consult your colleague to get his or her opinion. Yeah, judgment call. If your opinion, according to the laws, you think that ball is thrown or chucked, call and signal no ball. That is according to the laws. The playing conditions expand a little bit on it. They've added or tried to give a bit more clarity on this thrown thing. So what the playing conditions allow is, the playing conditions allow for a flex of 15 degrees. 15 degrees flex. So there is so at international cricket, at provincial cricket, and for many competitions across the world, they've also incorporated this into their playing condition, where they allow this flexing of the arm of 15 degrees. So if it's 15 or less, it's a fair delivery. If it's anything, if it flexes more than 15, the bowler is throwing. So now that is in the playing conditions. So now, how do you judge with the eye? Is it less than 15? Is it more than 15? It is impossible to judge it with the naked eye. That's why at international and provincial level, so what the umpires do is, they will report the bowler, because the playing conditions allow for a bit of flex. And because you cannot judge flex whether it's less or more than 15 with the naked eye, you cannot call. So umpires will report the bowler. They after the game, they'll fill in a report. They'll usually add video footage of the various balls that they think look suspect. They'll add it to their report, and they'll make it. They'll send it to the player, the management of that team, and it gets sent to the ICC. That player then now needs to go to an accredited institute, like a sports and science institute, but it must be accredited by the ICC to get tested. There at this institute, the bowler will then get put through his or her paces. They will put on all these wires, there'll be camera angles from on top, side, in front, behind. The bowler will then be put through his or her paces, and with technology, they can then say, yes, the flex is more than 15. No, the flex falls within the limit, so the bowler is allowed to bowl. Or no, the flex is more, the bowler is will then be suspended for a period of time. So just to summarize, at international and at provincial level, we're not allowed to call. There's this playing condition that allows 15-degree flex. The naked eye you cannot call it with the naked eye. We can just report. The player then needs to get tested. And at this institute, let's say the Sports and Science Institute, they will then make the call whether the flex is less or more than 15 degrees. Tom, at club level, so what is the process with regards to? I know we also can't call it; we just report. But what is the process after that, after reporting?
Correct, Abdullah. We don't call it on the field because, as you correctly mentioned, we cannot judge with the naked eye 15 degrees worth of flex. So there is a suspect bowling action committee that the Western Province Cricket Association has put together. And as umpires, we need to report a suspect action that we see or we think we've seen on the field of play. If the game is over the weekend, we need to send in the report by Tuesday of the following week. And that suspect bowling action committee will have a look at any video footage that is available of that player. If there is no video footage available, they will go to his or her next match and they will watch from the side and they will record with their own video cameras footage. And if they decide that it is a suspect bowling action, then they will call that bowling action for thorough testing, as you've just explained. There is a Sports Science Institute here in Cape Town that players can be tested. So please, ladies and gents, do not call and signal no ball for a suspicious action in a club match. You need to report it and let the relevant authorities test or at least come and watch that player in action before any further action can be taken. It could ruin a player's career if you no-ball them out of a game for what you think is a suspicious action. If a bowler runs up and you can see deliberately throws the ball, maybe to try and hurt the batter or to gain an unfair advantage, then yes, you can, because you've seen the change in action and it is a deliberate throw, you can call and signal no ball. But that is a very rare occurrence. What we do often see is we see players who have suspect actions that need to be reported by the umpires. Next question comes from Alexis. She says, as a scorer, something I have come across when scoring at provincial level was a ball going for 11. Yes, 11. There was confusion for both umpires as well as for the scorers present. Here is the scenario, Abdullah, and if you can go through it for us, please. And I'm quite sure 11 runs shouldn't have been awarded. We shall correct the scoring for this particular delivery. So the bowler bowls a ball which the umpire calls a wide, and the ball goes past the wicketkeeper. So the batters run and complete a single. The fielder picks up the ball and tries to run out the batters, but the ball goes past the wicketkeeper and hits the helmet that is on the floor behind the wicketkeeper. It was discarded. And then the ball ricochets and goes over the boundary for 4. So, Abdullah, how many runs should have been scored in this scenario, please?
So we'll start with the wide. As soon as the wide was bowled, that will count. That's one. Then the batters start running. So I'm assuming they've completed one run. The ball then gets returned, and before they cross for the second run, the ball then hits the keeper's helmet, or the helmet that was placed behind the keeper. In my presentation earlier, so now we're at one for the wide and one for the run, and they have not crossed for the second run when the ball hits the helmet. In my presentation earlier, I said the ball automatically becomes dead as soon as, while the ball is in play, it hits the helmet that was placed behind the keeper. So as soon as the ball automatically becomes dead, anything that happens after that is irrelevant. So now the ball ricocheting and going towards the boundary, that does not count because the ball is dead. So only runs that will count is those that happen before the ball hits the helmet, and we now on one for the wide, one that they ran, and we'll get to it next week while the ball is still in play, and if a ball hits the keeper's the helmet that was playing behind the keeper, yes, ball automatically becomes dead, but 5 penalty runs will be awarded to the batting side. So in total, what do we have, Tom? 5 penalty runs for the ball hitting the helmet, and 2, so it's 7 in total.
Correct. Thanks, Dula. So the 4 that the ball went over the boundary for should not count. Why? Because as soon as the ball hit the helmet, then it became dead, and so nothing counts after that. So the correct total number of runs should be 7 for that scenario, Alexis. Yanita asks, Abdullah, how do you train yourself to look for no ball on the back foot, then look for no ball on the front foot, then you watch the rest of the delivery for LBW and caught behind and all of those good things? They call it the business end that we must look at. How do you practice that coordination to adjust your eyes as quickly as possible, especially when you've got Kagiso Rabada bowling at 140 clicks, Dula?
Yeah, and I'm going to use him in exactly my example when I had him the very first time. I can still remember it was a Ram Slam game many years ago that I had him for the first time. So Yanita, the higher you go in terms of the levels of cricket, what I mean higher is, let's say you'll start at club cricket, Division 5, and you'll work your way to 4, 3, 2, Premier League. Then from Premier League, you go over to, let's say, Division 2 cricket at provincial level. Then you go to Division 1, and from there, let's say you go to SA20 and then international cricket. So the higher you go, the quicker the game gets. Everything happens so much quicker. So your eyes, your movements, your reactions, everything needs to be quicker. So I'll use Kagiso as an example. So I was at Newlands. I was standing with the late Sean George, and he actually, coached me by telling me it happens quickly. Rabada is quick through the crease. So those eyes needs to be quick. Sean actually, coached me before the game, and the late Sean George, and he said to me, those eyes needs to be quick. And I said, yeah, Sean, yeah, okay, my eyes will be quick. But when experiencing it, he was so quick through the crease that, I was still looking down. When I looked up, the ball was in the keeper's hands already. I'm like, shoo, I didn't expect this to be this quick. Okay, let's me. Second ball. Again. Still, I was still. Oh, this happens quick. Phew. Third ball. It took me a while to adjust to the speed. It probably in his third over only. I promise you, my eyes or everything started to adjust. And then I could look at the foot landing and see the ball in the keeper's hands. So yes, you need to, and that's why it's so important that you actually do go to nets, or to try to go to nets. So before these games, they do have nets a day prior to the game. And this was one of the reasons that this made me go. And late Sean George actually said to me, Abdullah, to get used to the bowlers, to get used to their pace. And yes, it will take you a while. You're at the very high level now. So, and he's a quick international bowler. So the more experience you get, you'll get used to the pace. But to help you, go to nets. Go to their nets. Look at them. It will help you, and it will help you adjust to the pace. So then the more I stood for the Rabadas, and then I had soon after that, Morne Morkel was also quick through the crease, quick feet. You then adjust, and as I went through the season, and then the next season, I adjusted and adjusted to the quickness of these type of bowlers. But how do you practice? Yes, you get used to it, but at that level, try to go to the nets, and that's where how you practice and train your eyes to get quicker. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. If I can just add to that, net's definitely a great idea, because then you will see as well who the tight bowlers are in terms of no balls, and who are the ones that are always behind the line. You should always watch the feet, but if you've got a bowler that is always behind the line, then you can, as soon as his back foot lands, then you can judge as to where his or her front foot is going to land. And then if you're safe that the back foot is far enough back, then you can adjust your eyes to the top of the hand, because ideally you want to see the ball out of the hand to pick up the flight and to judge the swing as early as possible. And there you will help yourselves to improve your leg before wicket decisions. But what I've also found is useful is sometimes the body of the bowler blocks your view of the landing of the front foot. And I think that's the case with Morne Morkel, Abdullah. I've never stood for Morne Morkel, but I hear that his body was a lot of the time in the way of the view of his front foot landing. So what you can try and do there is you can try and move 1 or 2 feet back or 1 or 2 feet forward to see if that will help your angle to view his front foot landing. If that doesn't work, and this is a last resort, is some umpires have asked the bowler in question to put their front foot right on the edge of the popping crease, where there would be close to a no ball, but it's not a no ball, and then mark the front of the bowler's shoe on the line, make a line on the pitch. And so now you're actually judging the front of the bowler's landing, because you can see the front foot of the front edge of the front foot landing. You can't see the back edge of the front foot landing. So that's another technique that you could use to help judging a no ball. Not easy, but practice will help you to become better at it. Abdullah, I went through the chat box in between all of the answers to our quiz questions. Tabiso asked, is it possible to run 5 runs in a match? I've never seen it happen, but is it possible, Abdullah?
I've seen it. It was many years ago when it was either the SCG, the Sydney Cricket Ground, or the Melbourne Cricket Ground, when it was still those huge grounds. Now the grounds are much smaller because there are now much more pavilions and other stuff that was built in the stadium. But back in the day, these stadiums were huge, and I was an avid cricket watcher. I would, during the December holidays, I would watch the Ashes in the morning. So I'll get my chips and my drinks and my sweets. I'll get up at let's say 12 o'clock. I'll watch through the night up until close of play. I'll then have an hour and a half sleep just to recharge my batteries, because the test match in South Africa, let's say the Boxing Day test match, is starting at 10 o'clock. And then I'll be watching from ball 1 till ball 5. So while as a youngster, while I was watching those Ashes test matches on let's say the Sydney Cricket Ground, which was huge grounds, I actually saw a 5 that was what was ran. It was huge fields, and I saw it on more than one occasion. So yeah, it happened back in the day. But we all know these days, most grounds across the world are not so big anymore. So I don't see it these days being able to physically run a 5. Yes, you can get through overthrows, but let's put overthrows aside. To actually run a 5, I don't see it happening these days, because grounds are so much smaller than what they used to be. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Tula. Next question is from Deepak. And I think you did explain this. Maybe he asked his question before you fully explained it. A bouncer or a short pitch delivery bowled over the head height of a striker. Is it a no ball or is it a wide? Please explain, Tula.
So Deepak, there's a difference how the law sees this particular ball and how many playing conditions across the world see this. And I've mentioned this because people would often let's say the IPL, you would often see the ball going above head height of the striker. Let's say it's the first ball of in that over that's above head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease. You would see on TV in the IPL or SA20 or the T20 competitions across the world, that ball being called wide. But those are playing conditions that's in place for those particular competitions. But according to the laws of cricket, if a ball is above head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease, strikers in, or either umpire, although the striker's in is in the best position because he or she has a side-on view, striker's in umpire needs to call and signal no ball according to the laws of cricket. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Tula. Yanita asks if we can give her an example of obstructing the field. Yanita, this is one of the laws that we will deal with in the 6th lecture. And we have got a video of a perfect example of obstructing the field. So stay tuned or join us next week, Tuesday, for that. Mohammed says that he knows the law of bowling dangerous and unfair non-pitching deliveries, which are also known as full tosses, is being covered in law 41.7. Remember that we won't go through it in our lectures because it's not examined in the Cricket South Africa Level 1 exam, but it is in our presentation, which is again part of the course material email that I emailed to all of you. So go have a look there, and it's described pretty much in detail for you to learn about Muhammad. But of course, we've seen it happen to Virat Kohli being dismissed of what looked like it should have been a no ball. I haven't seen video images of that delivery. If and when I do come across video images of that dismissal, I will definitely use them in one of our lectures. But Abdullah, what Mohammed would like to know is, in what position must the striker be to be judged as a dangerous non-pitching delivery above waist height? Where do we judge it, please?
Yeah, I saw the Kohli dismissal, and I will touch on it, and I'll give the reason why the TV umpire came to that particular decision. But according to the laws of cricket, where you need to judge the striker standing upright at the popping crease. That is where you need to make that judgment call. So you need to ask yourself the question. And I know at the IPL, and I'll get to it, they do have technology available that can assist. But most of us, most of the games we do is not televised, so there's no assistance really to help us. It is a judgment call that you need to make. And how do you make this judgment call? What is the question that you need to ask yourself? Let's first cover what the law say. You need to judge it. Batter or striker standing upright at the popping at the popping crease. So that is where you need to make that judgment call. So now for a full toss or a non-pitching delivery, you need to ask yourself the question: if the batter was standing upright at the popping crease, would the ball have been above waist height? That is the question. It becomes difficult when the batters double step, like with the Kohli dismissal. Kohli took 2 or 3 steps towards the ball. So Kohli was not standing at the popping crease. So you need to make your judgment: batter standing at the popping normal normal stance, standing upright at the popping crease. If it's above waist height, call and signal no ball. If it's not above waist height, it's a legal delivery. So yeah, that is your judgment call. Can get difficult if a batter double steps like Kohli. Now you need to bring in your judgment call and ask yourself: if Kohli was standing upright at the popping crease, would that ball have been above waist height? If yes, no ball. If no, fair the delivery. And there are lots of other info that you need to take into account as well. You need to take into account the trajectory of the ball. And we'll get to the Kohli dismissal now. And they took the trajectory into account when making that call. So you need to take that information also into account when making that call, because sometimes you do find, especially spinners, bowling those loopy deliveries. Now, let's say the ball loops above the eye line. So now it's in the middle of the pitch, and it's actually, let's say, above head height of the striker. But as the ball is getting towards the striker, now the ball starts dipping. So you don't judge it when it's in the middle of the pitch. Now it's, let's say, above the striker's head. You don't call now no ball because it's above the striker's head. That is not your judgment point. Your judgment point should be: where was the ball? Would the ball have been striker standing upright at the popping crease? Would have been above waist height? If yes, no ball. If no, fair delivery. So to come back to Kohli's dismissal. So at the IPL, it's a new playing condition that was brought in this year, where with the help of technology, with the help of Hawkeye, they can make those judgment calls. So Hawkeye measures Coley's height at the popping crease. Hawkeye then will use their technology, taking into account Coley's height and exactly where Coley's waist is, standing in a normal position, an upright position at the popping crease. So with their technology, taking into account the trajectory, and according to Hawkeye, the ball was on a downward trajectory. And when the ball was, according to Hawkeye's technology, Coley standing upright at the popping crease, it would have been below Coley's waist. Hence, they deemed that as a fair delivery, and that's why Coley was given out. So yeah, so technology, it wasn't an umpire's opinion. It was actually with the use of the Hawkeye technology, taking into account Coley's height, which they've measured at the popping crease, taking into account trajectory. And they deemed the ball to be below waist height, so technology actually gave Coley out. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Tula. Next scenario comes from Suhail Parker. In a match, a ball is bowled over head height. Suhail does not mention whether it is a bouncer or it is a full toss. The striker hits the ball and the square leg umpire signals no ball. Was the square leg umpire's call correct? Abdullah, let's go through both scenarios. If it was a short pitch delivery, a bouncer over head height, and if it was a full toss, a non-pitching delivery over head height. What is the call? Playing conditions and law, please.
No problem. Let's discuss law first, and then I'm going to get to playing conditions. So law, tell us, where is your judgment call? And let's start with a a bouncer above head height of the striker, standing upright at the popping crease. Let's start with that according to law. So according to law, batter standing upright at the popping crease, if the ball is above head height, either umpire to call and signal no ball. So what is your judgment call? You need to make a judgment call. Batter standing upright at the popping crease, was the ball above head height? If the answer to that question is yes, according to the laws of cricket, you then need to call and signal no ball. You do not take into account whether the ball was hit by the striker or not. That is irrelevant. You do not make that judgment call. If the striker hits the ball, I'm not going to call no ball. If the striker doesn't hit the ball, I'm going to call no ball. I'm not going to call. It's irrelevant whether the striker hit it or not. Your judgment call needs to be, is the ball above head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease? If your answer to that question is yes, according to the laws of cricket, you need to call and signal no ball. Same principle will apply according to the laws of cricket. If he is above waist height, striker standing upright at the popping crease, if your answer to that question is yes, you need to call and signal no ball. If it's above waist height, if it's not above waist height, it will be a legal delivery. So it doesn't matter if the striker hit the ball or not. That's not the criteria that you need to take into account in making that call. Let's go to most playing conditions across the world, where in playing conditions, they do not call it no ball as in law. Let's use T20 as an example. I know in the IPL, they allow 2 bounces between shoulder height and head height in the over. Let's say it's the first one in the over. So if the ball is above head height of the striker, and the striker does not, and striker standing upright at the popping crease, the striker does not make contact with the ball, you will call and signal wide as per the playing condition. And you'll also signal one for the over to the bowler and the striker. If the bowler, according to playing condition, bowls a short ball and it's above head height, and let's assume it's the first short ball of the over, and if the bowler bowls a short ball that's above the head of the striker standing upright at the popping crease, but in this case, the striker hits the ball. Will you call wide? No, you will not call wide because the striker hit the ball. But what you will call is, you will call one for the over because it is above head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease. Tom, did I answer the question, or is there a scenario that I need to elaborate more on?
No, Abdullah, you've gone through all 4 options that I mentioned. Thank you very much. Next question is from Muhammad Manga. He's just wants clarity on calling and signaling no ball and immediately calling and signaling dead ball. He asks, which call will stand? Is it no ball or is it dead ball? Abdullah, I think you gave a great example there in your lecture.
Yeah, so Muhammad, both will stand and both will count. So according to the law, you need to call those 2 calls, no ball and dead ball, quickly after each other. So you actually call no ball, and a split second later, you need to make the dead ball call. So because you call the no ball, what does that mean? It will be a no ball. That ball wouldn't count, and 1 run would accrue to the over. But a split second later, you made the call of dead ball. So now the ball is dead, and anything that happens after that is irrelevant. So both calls will stand, your no ball will stand, the ball will have to be rebowled, 1 run will go towards the total. Dead ball will also stand. You've called dead ball. Ball is now dead. You've informed the players that the ball is dead. Batter cannot hit the ball now. Fielders cannot pick it up and try to run out the batter. Anything that happens after that call is irrelevant. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Deepak has highlighted a question that we missed at the top of the chat box. What could be the possible outcomes in a case where a person or animal or an object enters the field and the ball hits that object or that person or the animal? Is it dead ball? Is it runs as ran? Or is it a wicket? I'm not sure why it would be a wicket, but is it a boundary? How can we be consistent in making such a decision and also objective, Abdullah?
Yeah, Deepak, the law guides us here, and you can make the call in consultation with your colleague. So the 2 of you can discuss the incident, discuss what both of you saw, and come to a decision. You'll need to look at each of those instances separately. And umpires, I mean, we are the we neutral, we objective. We need to make our calls without favoring anyone. So that is part of our our job to be fair. That's why we the sole judges of fair and unfair play. So I would say all our decisions that we make would be fair, and objective. So to answer your question on whether it's or how do you make your call? Someone, let's say a person runs onto the field, a dog runs onto the field. You need to ask yourself the question, will either of the side, you need to take both into account, will they be disadvantaged? If your question to that if your answer to that question is yes, you need to call and signal dead ball as soon as the player runs on, touch the ball, or the dog runs on and touch the ball. So as soon as you call dead ball, that means anything that happens after that is irrelevant. So no batter then can be dismissed, even if the batter maybe starts running. As soon as you make the call, anything after that is irrelevant. So the guidelines that the law give us, does it disadvantage either of the side? If yes, rather call and signal a dead ball. The law also covers where, again, the judgment call, you can consult your partner. If it was not for the person or fee or dog or object touching the ball was racing towards the boundary. And a meter from the boundary, the dog intercepts the ball. Again, your judgment call. If your opinion, that ball, if it was not for the dog intercepting the ball, that ball would have actually gone over the boundary. The law covers you. The law allows you to actually give the boundary for, because in your opinion, that ball would have gone over the boundary. If, in your opinion, it would not have gone over the boundary, you then won't call and you won't then give the boundary. Again, you need to look at the situation. You need to make that judgment call and ask yourself, either looking at this with this animal, person, or object, will it disadvantage either side? If yes, rather call and signal dead ball. Did I answer the question, Tom?
100%, Dula.
Okay, over.
Mohammed goes on to ask, if the bowler has a visible bow shape in his action, do you still follow the same steps of reporting the suspicious action, or do you just call it because it looks like he's throwing the ball? Dula?
Mohammed, we get guidelines. We are not allowed to call with the naked eye because the playing condition allows for 15-degree flex. We cannot see that with the naked eye. So you're not able to with 100% certainty say that what you are seeing is more than 15-degree flex. Don't call it. Report the bowler. Let the governing body takes its course. Whatever the steps is at provincial and international level, you'll complete the report. You'll add video footage of those particular deliveries. It gets sent to the governing body. They'll then advise the player when and where to go for testing. The Sports and Science Institute that's accredited by the International Cricket Council will then make that call whether the bowler is if the flex is more or less than 15 degrees. So yeah, you do not call. Our eyes are not trained to see the flex. Rather report and follow the steps. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Last question in the chat box is from Deepak. Do the two captains have any say in determining the boundary before the match starts? Or is it completely up to the umpires to decide? Or do the umpires decide with the captains? Abdullah?
If you want to go strictly according to the law, and I've covered this in that first lecture where the law actually say before the game starts, umpires and captains determine the hours of play, balls to be used, boundaries, field of play. So it is in the law book where the law allows for umpires and captains to do it. But at most of the grounds, it's usually the curator and the ground staff They then prepare the pitch, they prepare the field, they prepare the boundary for the field of for the game. If it's a test match, you need to make sure that the curator will prepare the ground before let's say before the game starts. So on day one, the boundaries will be a certain length. Those boundaries needs to be exactly the same for the duration of the match. You also need to be aware of sometimes sides wants to manipulate the boundaries. And we had it at in one of our competitions. One of the sides wanted to increase their net run rate, so we got to a particular field, and usually, let's say the boundary was let's say 80 meters. Suddenly we get to for this particular match, we get there and we see the boundaries are only 55 or 60 meters. We're like, phew, why is it so short? What the home side wanted to do, they wanted short boundaries to score a big total, to up their net run rate. In that instance, we as umpires, this was not the normal boundary for this particular ground. We actually instructed the curator to put the boundary at its normal place for that particular ground. Tom, did I answer the question?
100%, Dula. Thank you very much. What game was that, if I may ask?
Yeah, it was one of our it was one of the SA20 games last season. We got to Boland Park and they brought the field in, but it was tight. It was close to the end, and the net run rate was going to play. I mean, an important factor. And suddenly we got there, and suddenly the boundaries are like 15, 20 meters in. We're like, what's going on here? We were here 2 days, 3 days ago. And the boundaries were 80 meters. Why is it suddenly 60 meters? So we instructed the ground staff, you need to put it back.
Well done, Dula. I thought as much. Anything goes there at Boland Park this season. Thank you so much for all the expert answers, Abdullah. I think we've gone through everything in the chat box now. There is one hand up in the meeting room. Bakang, thanks for your patience. Please unmute your microphone. The floor is yours. Bakang, are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi there, go ahead.
Just a quick one. I would just want to know that, say the bowler, bowls a suspect action, and then he gets suspended from bowling. So the suspension for those innings, they only count for the bowling, will not be allowed to bowl. So he'll just field and bat, and then let's say the suspension comes when it's the second time he does that. So does it warrant penalty runs or not during the suspension?
Abdullah, are there penalty runs for a throw by a bowler?
No, there are no penalty runs. The punishment is removing the bowler from the attack. The fielding side is now a bowler short. The lawmakers decided that is enough punishment, to the fielding side. They're not going to slap them with an additional extra 5 penalty runs. The penalty for removing the bowler from the attack is enough, and the law. And so no penalty runs. Only removing the bowler from the attack for that particular innings. If it's the first innings, not allowed to bowl in that particular innings. In the second innings, he or she is allowed to bowl. We'll then start with a clean slate. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Of course, there is the 1-run penalty for the no ball that the will be awarded to the batting side for each time that the bowler is adjudged to throw. But it's not 5 penalty runs, just 1. Next hand up is Tabiso. Tabiso, please unmute your microphone. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Tom and Abdul. I would like to ask a question. So let's say the bowler is in action to bowl, then the ball decides to slip and go through the stumps while the non-striker went out from the popping crease. Is it a run out or a dead ball?
Very good question, Tabiso. Abdullah, did you hear that scenario? You want to take us
No, can you just explain to me what he's saying?
So in the bowler's bowling action, the ball slips out of his or her hand and it goes on to hit the stumps of the non-striker who is backing up outside of his popping crease. So is that a dead ball or is that a run out of the non-striker? I think it's different in law as it is in some playing conditions. If you could maybe explain the differences to us, please, Dula.
Sorry, Tom. Sorry, Abdul. I did ask, is it run out or is it a dead ball?
Yes, that's what I mentioned.
Okay, Tom. Okay.
So the difference in the law and when it comes to playing conditions, the law wants the bowler, there needs to be an intention by the bowler to run out the non-striker. So playing conditions wants there to be an intention to run out the bowler. If there's no intention by the bowler to run out the non-striker, even though the non-striker is not behind the popping crease, the non-striker will not be run out. That is playing condition. Law doesn't look for any intention by the bowler. As long as the ball is still in play, and if the ball is not, and if the wicket is down, the non-striker not behind the popping crease, the law doesn't need there to be an intention. Ball is in play. Bowler not behind the non-striker, not behind the popping crease, behind the popping crease at the non-striker's end. So non-striker will then be a run out. So according to playing condition, this will be not out. There was no intention by the bowler. According to law, then there doesn't need to be an intention to run out the non-striker. Ball is alive. Non-striker will then be out. But I'm trying to visualize this, Tom, because there is a law that speaks about if the bowler accidentally drops the ball, you need to call and signal dead ball. So I'm not trying to visualize where in this did the bowler actually drop the ball.
Probably in the gather, Abdullah. That's what I'm thinking. Tabiso?
Yeah. During the maybe or during the gather or when the bowler tries to release the ball.
Yeah, so playing condition not out, law, yeah, the batter would then be out. Non-striker would be out.
Will be out.
According to the laws of cricket, yeah. Ball is still alive.
All right, thank you, Abdul.
Thanks, Tabiso. Next hand up is Bakang. Please unmute your microphone. The floor is yours.
Okay, another question is that maybe it's something that I haven't been paying much attention to. It's in regard to awarding runs to a batsman. If a batsman hits the ball and then it goes high, very high, and then they complete maybe 2 runs before the ball is caught, do we is there what the 1 run awarded to the run complete or nothing gets awarded? I just want to know that.
Bakang, absolutely no runs are awarded to the batter if he or she is out caught. So the ball can be in the air for 5 minutes and they can run 10 runs before the ball is caught. No runs will be awarded to the batter if they are out caught. And as we learned this evening, the not out batter will go back to the non-striker's end for the next ball. Okay, the not out batter will go back to his or her original end. So when a batter is out caught, no runs will be added to the batting side's score, regardless of how many times they crossed and completed a run before the catch was taken.
I think
I hope that answers your question. Thanks, Bakang. Tabiso, you've still got your hand up. Is that an old hand or do you have a new question?
It's a new question.
Go ahead.
Okay, Tabiso, before I'm just Tom, I'm just visualizing this, and you can help me here.
Yes.
That previous scenario of Tabiso, you know, when we've covered it tonight. If a bowler accidentally drops the ball before delivering the ball, the umpire should call and signal dead ball. So I'm visualizing this scenario. That bowler accidentally dropped the ball.